Hey everybody, Hunter back again from Showtime Studios. We're going to start on the, what are we doing here? I don't know what we're doing. I got confused. Interior, that's what we're doing. That's what that stuff's called. Um, but before I get started on doing the tutorial on this part of it, I would like to say again, I know I've said it a lot, but I'd like to say again, thanks to everybody out there that's watching this series. I'm very surprised that there's so many guys out there in the community that are watching it and picking up tricks and watching the videos all the way through and leaving the comments on them. Again, I want to let everybody know that it is taking a lot of time to do this, not only with the building part, but also the making the videos, the uploading, and things like that. And I have not been doing a lot of commenting on the comments, and bear with me on that. I'm not ignoring anybody. If I missed a question or whatever in the questions and answers, I'm not ignoring you. It's just I'm trying to stay somewhat focused on making this series work from start to finish. I've tried it before and never succeeded at it. I've started a series and then all of a sudden it went away. I've started some builds that I kind of wanted to do as a tutorial thing, and those went away. But this time around, I think we got the hang of it, and we're learning. So, but it is taking a lot of time, and I'm not able to watch a whole lot of videos out there or comment on a lot of stuff in the community. But I'm thinking about you guys and what you're doing. I have seen some work that's going on in the community. Again, very nice work. Keep doing it. Keep having fun. And we're going to keep doing what we do here at Showtime Studios and hopefully get this series wrapped up and have a finished model. And in the process, hopefully helped out some fellow builders and especially the new guys and the intermediate builders. So we're going to move on to spraying the interior parts. And in between the last video and this one, I made a decision to do something that I've done things like this before. If you remember, I made mention to we had to go back over and spray this with another coat of the racing white, and then we've got to put it in a clear coat. Well, I kind of studied how the interior goes together in this thing, and I think what we're going to do is, since it's going to be at least tomorrow or maybe Tuesday before I get more of this paint, to keep the series going forward, I'm going to do things a little bit different. So in this episode, we're going to be spraying all of our interior parts with the wooden deck tan, which is the color from Tamiya, the acrylic, and XF78 is the color that we're using, and it's a real nice tan color. I use it a lot in a lot of my interiors. I like tan interiors. I've always been a fan of them ever since I've owned my late 70s Trans Ams. I had two 79 Trans Ams with the black with the tan called buckskin interiors in them, and I've always been a fan of tan interiors. And for some reason or another, when I bought my Corvette, it has a white interior in it. So I don't know what happened there, but we're going to use the wooden deck tan on this, and I have all of the parts ready to go. I just took a piece of parts tree and clipped all the connector points off of it, glued it to the bottom of the seat. Same thing here, and we did the super glue with the accelerator trick. So we got that ready to go. Now we have the steering column and the steering wheel here. We're going to glue them together, put them on the dash, which is over here with the toothpick glued to it. We're going to paint all that as one assembly. And then we also have some parts tree glued to the interior panels. And I think that's all the parts that we need to paint wooden deck tan. Yes, it is. And then also, while I'm spraying those, I'm going to come in and freehand all of this center console in here because we want this the same color as the dash. And I'll show you along the way how we're going to go about doing this so we can keep moving forward and not affect the interior when we respray the rest of the lower body. So we're going to start out, I guess, with let's go ahead and glue the steering column and the steering wheel into the dash, and then we'll start spraying stuff while the glue's drying up on that. So we're going to go to our Tamiya Extra Thin, And usually in this situation, what I do is I like to hold the steering column just like I'd be sitting in the car looking at it. So I'm holding it by the turn signal switch right now. And I will go in and take a little bit of the extra thin and drop on the mounting pin here. And then I'll take the steering wheel and set the steering wheel into place. Now what I'm looking for on this is I always want my steering wheel centered. So you have a half moon shape here that mounts in the dash. So now that I have the glue on the steering wheel, I'm kind of just want to get it centered up there, you know, where it looks right. And where the steering wheel looks, you know, centered and the spider straight across. Now what we're going to do is, since this is a half moon here and not a full round, we're kind of dictated when that steering column goes in on what position it's going to sit in. So we're going to put a little bit of the Tamiya extra thin back in here, and then we're going to pick up the assembly, and we're going to slip the steering column into the dash where we want it to go. And I'm going to push back on that. I'm going to make sure that the steering column is straight and looks right. And then I've got the steering column in where it goes. So I'm going to hold my finger underneath of the turn signal switch, and I'm going to rotate the steering wheel just a little bit to line it up and make it centered so that everything is nice and even. And I'm a fan of that. I've always done that on my one-to-one cars. I mean, whenever I park the Corvette, the steering wheel always has to be straight ahead. It's just one of those things that it just irks me when it's not. And when I pull into a parking spot or something like that, I always make sure the wheels are straight ahead, the steering wheel's centered. I don't know why. It's just one of those things that I do. It's a sickness. So we're going to put a little bit more of the Tamiya extra thin around the base of the steering column here. And we're going to put a little bit on the outside of the glue joint between the steering wheel and the column. And when we get done with that assembly, let me find the camera here. There's the camera. Now I get the camera to find the part. Come on, camera. There we go. We got everything centered up in there. You can see that the steering wheel is going with the gauges back in there, the curve on the gauges. That's what we're after. So we're going to set that over to the side. We're going to let that dry up while we start spraying some of the interior components. I've already got the wooden deck tan in the airbrush. The airbrush is set at 15 psi. Actually, it's set at 20. We're at about 15 to 16 when we pull the trigger. This is thinned with 91% rubbing alcohol. And what I do is I get a brand new bottle of it and I dump out half into another bottle. And then I fill up both of those bottles with 91% rubbing alcohol and blend it all together, shake it. And what I have is 2 ready to spray bottles of paint. Now, most of the time I don't thin the Tamiya paints. You can spray the wooden deck tan without thinning it. But when I use it on interiors, I like to thin it down because it gives me more of a suede appearance on the finished product. So now we're going to go in. And I probably had a little bit of black residue in this gun. There we go. Now we're back down to the wooden deck tan. And we're going to go in and start spraying our parts. So here we go. And before I spray, I didn't even, actually, I was just putting out air on that one. I see something that I don't like. And somehow or another, I missed it when I was cleaning, sanding, and scraping. I had a little bit of an edge that I left on this seat. This must have been the one I cleaned up off camera. Looks like I got lazy on it. Let me see if this one's got that. Nope, we're good on that one. Okay. Here we go. Now we're going to spray the seats. All right, so we're just going to go in and I'm going to get the paint flowing here. We're not putting a whole lot down on the surface. We will be going back in and doing some detail work on the seat once everything is installed in the interior to blend everything and make it look good. Now again, remember, I'm not covering this all in one pass like I would over at the spray booth. That's because I'm trying to keep down the overspray here at the bench. So I'm not putting a whole lot of paint down on the surface to just limit my overspray. And we're getting a nice even coverage on it. And like I say, thinning it with this rubbing alcohol, it gives you a nice suede appearance to the seat. And you don't have to paint underneath the seat and do all that because this glues directly down to the floor. So that will not be an issue. And there we go. There's the first seat sprayed. Looking pretty good. Now I also have my foam block over here that I put everything in. So we're just going to set that down in the foam block. And we're going to move on to the next seat. And I'm actually going to, before I get around the back here, I'm going to set that down. I'm going to turn this paint down a little bit. We had it turned up for the semi-gloss black we were spraying. I'm going to turn it down there a little bit. And one of the reasons why I do that is I turn the paint down, and on this particular airbrush, when I pull the trigger back, it comes back to a stop point. So I don't have to pull the trigger back and just kind of hold it in midair. I can pull it back against the stop and limit my paint flow. And it makes the airbrush a lot more comfortable to use. So like right now, I've got the trigger pulled all the way back against the stop, and I don't have to worry about varying the pressure on the trigger. I can just continue to spray and move the part around. Makes it a little bit easier sometimes. Actually, I need just a little bit more there. There we go. Oh yeah, that's working a little bit better. But as you can see, I'm really limiting the overspray that I have here at the workbench. Normally, I don't spray at the workbench. I spray at the booth, but since we're doing a tutorial, it's easier to do it this way. Okay, we have another seat painted. Moving on. Let's go in and we'll go ahead and start working on our dash. Everything's cleaned up on this, ready to go. Just kind of give it, check your part, make sure everything is no dust or anything like that got on it, or hair or whatever. And then you can continue with spraying the dash. And what I'm going to shoot for in this is, you notice I have the panel liner that's on this dash, and we put that down first. Now what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to go in and I'm going to spray this dash with the wooden deck pan and get full coverage. But what I'm hoping will happen here is it will tone down the very stark panel liner, but still give us that black recess down in all the vents and all that stuff. So we're going to see what happens. We may have to go back over this and at the end, and we may not. So we'll see. This here, to tell you the truth, for me, with this panel liner is an experiment. So, and what I'm doing here is I'm actually going ahead and spraying the petals along with everything else. We will go back in and do the petals with a small brush and another color. which will be probably semi-gloss black and black. But I'm going to go ahead and get a coat down on everything. All right. Now we're going to go in and start spraying the little nooks and crannies in the dash. And sometimes when you have the steering wheel in place, it makes it a little bit trickier to get paint in all the areas. But once you get some practice with the airbrush and know where to aim it and how far to pull the trigger back and things like that, it's not too bad. It actually goes pretty well. I'm spraying the steering column now. Now the turn signal switch and stuff like that, and the tilt adjustment for the steering column, we'll go back in and we'll detail those with a small brush. I'm spraying in behind the spider now of the steering wheel. And then we'll get a coat across the front of it here. Most of the Tamiya panel liner is covered up now, but it did give us a nice shadow on it. But we'll go back in and enhance that a little bit when we do our detail work. So let me, I'm going to lay the airbrush down here. Let me show you how the dash come out so far. There we go. That's what the dash looks like right now. You can see the recesses really showed up real nice. The vents and all that stuff, the separate switches on the dash. That's from the Tamiya panel line accent color that we put in there. So that's all we need on the dash assembly. And now the last thing that we're going to spray is we're going to go ahead and do the interior panels. These are the side panels. And we will be going back in and doing a little bit of taping to put an accent in on the door panel to make them not so bland, I guess you could say, and all one color. We're going to accent them a little bit. And another thing I like to do, I don't know if it's showing up here, but if you can see the light and dark spots that's in that panel, sometimes on these longer interior panels and door panels and stuff like that, if I'm simulating like a cloth style panel or a leather, I will go in and vary in certain areas how much paint I put down. And what I'm trying to do is create more of a soft appearance. So you might have a little bit more paint in some areas than you do others. And it will help you with that, making it look like a fabric panel or a leather panel, just by how much you vary the airbrush, how much paint is going on the surface out of the airbrush. And you can do that by, kind of stopping in the middle of the panel and just putting a little bit more down in certain areas, and it will give you a very soft appearing finish. Just a little trick I do. It takes a while to get the hang of it, but give it a try and see if you like the look of it. If you don't like the look of it, then just spray it all one color, and whatever you like. That's the main thing. Whatever you want to spray it as. If you want to do multiple colors on the door panels, there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to go back in and put, bare metal full trim or something like that on it, that's fine. Okay, we just brushed that off just to make sure we got the dust off of it. Now we're going to spray the last panel. And we'll go back in and detail like the power window switches and stuff like that. We'll do a little bit of dry brushing on them. But we'll save that for an upcoming episode. And again, I'm varying. If you notice, I'm stopping in the middle of the panel and just kind of spraying more like a dot than anything else. That is the soft technique that I use. And then you just kind of blend it in, and it'll give you that nice soft texture to the part. So that's what the side panels look like. And we'll go ahead and get both of them put in the foam over here. And that's all the interior parts sprayed. Like I say, we will go in and do some detail work on those, but for right now, we'll let all that dry up. Now we're going to go in and we're going to do some work to the console. Now I'm going to go in and do this free-handed on the console. And I'm not worried about if I get a little bit of this acrylic on the outside of the body as far as overspray. It's no big deal. It's not going to affect us. All we're trying to do, and I'm pulling the trigger back just a little bit. Actually, I'm going to cut the paint flow down a little bit more. Actually, I'm going to cut it down a little bit more for what we're doing here. Here we go. And this is going to limit how much the paint is going anywhere other than the console. Now we're going to paint up the sides of it. And on this console here, the vertical sides of it are most likely, if it's anything like my Corvette, which that's what this console looks like, that would be carpet. But what we're going to do is we're going to make it look like the console goes all the way to the floor pan. So the center console is going to be wooden deck pan all the way to the bottom. And there we have the console sprayed through the center. And as you can see, we do not have overspray all over the fenders or anything like that. Everything is confined to the center console. So that is a procedure that you can go in and do without any issues, without any major problems. Now, the other thing that we have on this interior that's going to get a little bit tricky, and I'll show you how to address that. Let me grab a thing of tamiya tape. Hang on just a second. Let me get a roll of tamiya tape here. Actually, to tell you the truth, I'm going to use, let me use my 3/4 wide yellow tape here from 3M. If I can get a hold of it. Now, what we're going to do with this is just to make sure that we don't get a lot of this all over the exterior of the car, we are going to come in and slightly overlap a little bit of this, because you remember when the side panel goes on, it's going to set right up against the edge of this fender. So all we're going to do is just overlap the tape a little bit right here. And you don't want to come past this point because that's where the interior panel goes. So you don't really want to spray. You don't need to spray out here. So you want to tape that off. Just something to help protect it. I probably could go in and freehand it, but this is for the guys that's, you know, haven't done this before or want to know how I do some of this stuff, this is a way to keep it, since we do have to go back and respray this again, it's not that big of a deal. But if you already had this totally sprayed, clear coated, ready to go, you might want to go in just to be safe and protect the paint right through here, just so you don't get anything on it. And that's all we're doing. Okay, now we got that taped off. Now we're going to go back in. I'm going to use that same, this is wood grain in between these divisions back here, which are the stainless steel clamps that hold the wood together in the back. A lot of this is not going to be seen. It's going to be very hard to see it. But what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and spray this with the wooden deck tan to get us a wood color. But we're not going to spray the whole thing very opaque. We're going to put a very light coat down on it. But the thing that we do want to spray is this section right here. This is would be like the fabric panel that would go over top of the wheel wells in the rear. So we want to get those colored in real well. And I'm just going in and spraying just the wheel well part. I'm keeping the airbrush aimed at the wheel well. I'm not trying to spray anything else, anything down on that wood grain yet. We're not ready to do that. But this is when you know, get some experience with your airbrush, you know, some time under your belt. You can go in and do this type of stuff, and you can freehand things without making a mess all over everything else. But it takes practice, takes time. You know, you have to learn your paint. You have to learn your, especially learn your airbrush, what it does. Like I say, on this particular model, if you're building it, you don't have to be 100% particular about all this back here, because you will not see this when the model is complete. You'll see a hint of it, but you won't be able to just look at it like it's an exterior component. You're going to have to look real hard to see anything back here in the back of this car. As you can see, we're going in and we're keeping the paint right on the wheel well with very little overspray around the rest of the panels. Okay, we have both wheel wells sprayed in the rear, and I'll lay the gun down here again. I'll hold this up here and show you what it looks like. That is what we done. We went in, you can see how limited the overspray is on the surrounding panels. So we're good to go with that. Now I'm just going to leave the tape on there for now. I'm going to show you this start of the wood graining procedure that we're going to do back here in the back. We're going to use the wooden deck tan, but what we're going to do is we're going to go in very lightly and just put a mist coat down just to dull or actually tint this racing white a little bit. So you want to be very careful with your trigger pull, and you just want to put a little bit of color just to tint that just a little bit. And you can green it up a little bit by, you know, going a little bit darker in some areas and a little bit lighter in others. It'll actually add to the wood grain. It'll make it look more like, you know, maybe a knot or something like that when we're all done. I know some people were anxious for me to do a wood graining technique. A lot of times I just wing it, you know, on what design I'm looking for. I'm not trying to simulate any certain wood or anything. So that's what we're after. We got you can see a very thin coat of the wooden deck tan on the wood part of the rear part there of the car. The wooden boards, that's what we're talking about. And then we will go in with some other colors after that and make it look like real wood. So that's what we've got. That part, hang the airbrush back over here because we're done with that right now. And we're going to go ahead and pull the tape off of the body. And be careful when you're pulling your tape if it's on top of the paint like that, so you don't pull the paint off. Okay, we've got that. And then one of these interior panels is already dry. So we're just going to set this panel down into place right now, and I'll show you how this came out once we get everything sprayed. Now, as you can see with the panel, we wanted to get this back here painted the same color, but we want this to be wood grain. So that's why we sprayed the inner fender wells back there. But as you notice, the body will sit down in this area right here between the fender and the interior panel. So that part there will be covered up also. So that's what it'll look like. And then you can see how clean it is down here against the floor. We're going to have the flocking down in there. That'll be in a video coming up here very soon. So stay tuned for that one. So that's what we have. We have all the interior parts as far as the main color sprayed and ready to go. Another little thing I like to do is once this stuff dries out a little bit, mixing that rubbing alcohol in it does make it kind of a little bit grainy. It'll make it dry sometimes. You can come in with a wider brush that we use to clean the dust out of the panel lines, and you can give this a wipe. And what it'll do is actually, it's almost like true dry brushing with no color. And it will clean everything down, give it a nice soft appearance. We'll do the same thing back here on the wheel wells. So actually what you're doing is almost giving the paint a kind of a polish is what you're doing. And it's just a little trick I learned over the years on interiors. It kind of gives you that armor all look too, but it puts it in scale, doesn't make it too shiny. And there we go. And I'll do that same thing on all the other interior panels. But as you can see, we got the light and dark spots in here on the wood grain. That's the first step of the wood graining procedure. And then we'll come back in on the with some panel line, and we'll go in here and highlight all the wood grain stuff, and then we'll spray our final color on that. So that's all we've got for this video. If you got any questions or concerns or need any help on anything that we've done here, leave me a question, let me know. We'll be more glad to help you out. So until next time, this is Hunter from Showtime Studios, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.